Heather and Ignacio Garris always imagined a long life together, until a wandering eye leads to a dangerous obsession.
He was trapped between his marriage that he desperately wanted to hang on to and a crazy woman.
But sometimes fighting fire with fire can lead to a real-life horror story.
This person raised a handgun, said, you're the one I want. Get down on the ground.
And later, when it comes to picking husbands, Robin thought she hit the bullseye with Kevin Kalinowski.
I knew there was something wrong. He actually told me, one day you'll know the hell that is my life.
When secret affairs become fatal attractions, more than one marriage will end in murder. Because two is company, three's a crowd, and one is a killer. When you've broken as many hearts as I have, it helps to keep a slightly clinical view of love. After all, love is nothing but an infirmity of the heart, while the secret to a long romance lies deep within the mind. But as Ignacio and Heather Garris learned, there is a fine line between sex and psychosis. And when a casual fling turns into an obsession, that's when things get very interesting. Growing up in Colorado, Heather Hodges always dreamed of one day finding her knight in shining armor. I mean, what girl doesn't? Of course, for a girl as bubbly as Heather, everyone knew it wouldn't be long until her prince would come.
Hey, girl. Hi. Hey. Oh my gosh, how are you? Heather was funny. She always found something to smile about. She always tell you a joke or say something funny. No kidding.
And while attending a Colorado university, Heather locks eyes with her Prince Charming, a handsome college student.
Heather and Ig met in college. Heather said that it was love at first sight. She fell head over heels for Ig.
Ignacio Garris, or Ig as his friends call him, is a rough-and-tumble co-ed from the other side of the tracks.
Ignacio he sometimes came off as a tough guy, but he was a really nice guy.
Heather may have been the beauty in their relationship, but Ignacio is certainly no beast.
He seemed very soft and tender when he was talking about Heather. He was always bringing her lunch, always, bringing her flowers.
God knows we ladies love our gifts. But it was something else entirely that Heather most desires from her future husband.
Before they got married, Heather laid down a pretty clear rule that if she ever found out that Ignacio was cheating on her, she would divorce him.
Looks like Heather is using both her heart and head before jumping into this marriage. Still, even the most thought-out decisions don't always work out.
They married right after college. and they were very happy to start their new life together.
In 1991, the newly crowned Mr. and Mrs. Garris settle into a cozy house in Greeley, Colorado. And Ignacio quickly puts his college degree to good use.
Ignacio was a Greeley police officer. He was highly respected. He did some undercover work for the Greeley Police Department.
As a police officer, Ignacio was often exposed to the darker side of humanity. But he swears to never bring the job home.
Morning, honey.
Heather was very proud of Ig. Of course, you know, any police officer's wife is probably going to be a little concerned about his position and, you know, his safety out on the street.
For Heather, the best way to keep her mind off her husband's dangerous profession is keeping herself busy.
Heather worked as a supervisor at a credit union. She was a great supervisor. She was very people-oriented.
For 6 years, the Garrises maintain a happy, cheerful home. And in the spring of 1997, not even a visit from the stork seems to dampen their romance.
Heather and Ig were wonderful parents. They were very hands-on. They were very active in her school and in the things that she was interested in.
They were the perfect couple. I mean, as perfect as anybody can be. Both of them worked very hard. Both of them loved each other very well.
It seems life couldn't have been better for the Garris family. But what no one can see is that trouble is just around the corner. Trouble of the very worst kind.
Heather started having a string of bad luck. Her father died of a sudden heart attack. Her mom got cancer.
And I know that was really hard on Heather. They were a close-knit family, a tight family. And losing both of her parents so close together really did take a toll on her.
But Ignacio is by her side, and he does his best to be a supportive husband as Heather slips into depression.
Ig was supportive of Heather during that time. I know that it took a toll on their marriage. Heather was a little disengaged.
She would come home, have something to eat, then basically go to bed. And Ignacio would say later that he felt neglected about the same time.
Ignacio may be feeling a bit neglected at home. But there's someone at work who's giving him that much-needed attention. A female radio dispatcher named Shauna Nelson.
Ignacio met Shauna while Shauna was working as a dispatcher at the dispatch center. She was the voice that he would hear on his radio. She was the voice that he would hear right before he rolled into trouble.
Of course, trouble is something Shauna specializes in.
Shauna was very friendly, very charismatic.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
She particularly liked talking to men. She liked talking to male police officers.
But Ignacio, in particular, really lights up her switchboard.
Shauna started paying attention to him, and she started showing up at places that he was at, like Starbucks or grocery store. Like, she was actually kind of following him around and just by chance meeting him.
Who needs singles bars when you have coffee shops? I'll take it tall and hot with a double shot of love.
Started out as like a, friendly chat between coworkers. Shauna was also having problems with her husband. Shauna was married at the time to a Weld County Sheriff's deputy.
Before long, that shared frustration over their marriages leads to a release. And just like that, this cop has a whole new secret to keep undercover.
Because Ignacio worked odd hours, often late hours, it was easy for him to have an affair, and Heather wouldn't have any idea.
With the logistics of their deception so surprisingly simple, Ignacio and Shauna meet up several times a week.
At the beginning, it seemed to be just a casual affair for Ignacio. It seemed like something that he was getting attention from a woman, and he certainly wasn't intent on setting up a house with her. He just basically wanted to have some fun, have a fling.
Ignacio is confident that Shauna will share his discretion, but he couldn't be more wrong. And his mistake would soon prove deadly.
He was trapped between his marriage that he desperately wanted to hang on to and a crazy woman.
In Greeley, Colorado, what started as a casual fling between two married cops is quickly becoming more than just a one-night stand. And Ignacio Garris is about to learn that there is no such thing as an innocent affair.
Shauna and Ignacio would meet at bars, motels, and just kind of go with the flow. I think they just wanted to be together, and just be away from spouses and work.
But if Ignacio is hoping for no strings attached with Shauna Nelson, he better think again.
After about a 2 or 3 month period, Shauna started to get rather possessive.
It's just one of the rules of attraction.
I gotta go.
It's hard to turn an affair off once you've turned someone on.
Come on, are you serious?
Shauna was starting to send him text messages saying, "I love you, we should be together."
Just work. Don't worry about it.
I think about this time, Ignacio started to get a little scared. He was starting to realize that I'm getting sucked into something that I didn't originally bargain for.
But breaking things off is far from easy.
Shauna started to threaten him, telling him that she would go to Heather and tell her about this affair.
I have a family to think about.
So you have to be a good boy. You have to stay with me.
What do you think she's gonna say when she finds out about this?
I think that he saw himself as being just mired in mud. And he was just, like a pig in slop. And he figured, well, I might as well stick around.
And Shauna, well, she becomes even more invested in her lover when she and her deputy husband separate.
Shauna's husband found out about the affair when Shauna had left her diary open, her journal open, and had some very graphic language in there about one of Shauna's and Ignacio's liaisons together.
Yes, I am cheating on you.
Unbelievable.
Okay?
With Shauna's ball and chain out of the picture, she can finally focus all her love on Ignacio. And she has a lot of love to give.
What is it?
What's your name? See?
Shauna decided to get Ignacio's name tattooed on her ankle.
You got my name?
And when Ignacio found out about it, he went crazy.
Do that.
Because I love you.
Why would you deface your body by putting my name on it? Shauna said she did it because she wanted to show how much she loved him.
A tattoo is forever. Like us.
Ignacio's secret lover may not have his heart, but she has something better. Leverage.
Shauna started taking pictures of those two together, kind of compromising photos that she would use against Ignacio, telling him that if you want to break up with me, I'm going to produce these photos for Heather, and that's going to end your marriage.
The threat may be enough to keep Ignacio in line, since he's desperate to keep Heather in the dark. But Shauna is shouting it out on the mountaintop that Ignacio is her one and only.
It was the worst kept secret in Greeley. She had made the affair known to everybody. She wasn't trying to keep it a secret.
If Ignacio has any hope of saving his marriage, he knows he either has to come clean with Heather or take drastic measures. But 3 years into the affair, Shauna beats him to the punch.
Heather told me that she had been at the grocery store and she was approached by this woman that worked with Ig at the Greeley Police Department. And she started calling Heather names and saying really ugly things to her. And Heather didn't really know why.
She was starting to call her fat. She started calling her hey bitch. And again, this is a complete mystery to Heather. Why is this crazy woman coming after me right now?
And when Heather confides in her husband about his co-worker's verbal assault, Ignacio responds with a few white lies.
Like this, like attraction
Thing?
Yeah, this thing. Maybe
Ig
not a
told
thing.
Heather that Shauna was someone that he worked with who was
When I did.
enamored with him, but he didn't have anything to do with her. There was nothing going on with Shauna. And Heather believed him. I mean, she didn't have any reason to not believe him. I think she wanted to believe him.
Ignacio's indiscretions are still a secret, but not for long.
It's starting to spiral out of control. Ignacio's got all these different irons in the fire, so to speak, and eventually it's just going to start collapsing all over him.
And boy, does it ever. Just when it seems like things can't get any more crazy for our married man,
Guess what happened?
What's going on?
Shauna tells Ignacio she's pregnant.
She tells Ignacio that she's going to keep this child. She's
No.
adamant about the fact that this is our child and our child together.
Listen to me, all right? I'm not.
And I believe Shauna thought at that time that if they kept this child, Ignacio would be hers.
9 months later, Shauna Nelson delivers Ignacio's son.
At this point, Heather is completely clueless about what's going on. She has no idea that her husband has fathered a child with another woman.
But all that changes in the middle of the night on December 16th, 2006, when Heather catches Ignacio red-handed.
Heather had awakened, realized Ignacio was not in the home, Ignacio snuck out of the house.
And when our cheating husband returns home, Heather is waiting.
Where have you been?
Heather confronted Ig, and he finally confessed that he was having an affair, and it was Shauna,
Shauna, who you were?
and that it had been going on for a while, and that they did have a son together, that the baby was his.
I love you. Get out of my life.
As promised, Heather packs her bags and leaves. But a short while later, she returns with 3 conditions.
Heather tells Ignacio that she would stay in the marriage if, 1, he had to have a STD test, 2, he had to see a therapist, and 3, he had to finally break it off from Shauna.
Make the call.
Something tells me Shauna isn't going to take this well.
He called Shauna Nelson on the phone,
It's over.
and he ended the affair.
We're done. Please cannot call me again. Bye.
Shauna was very upset by this.
In the game of romantic brinksmanship, this is what we would call a declaration of war.
She immediately started making phone calls, sending emails, text messages to the Garris family.
Next come the threats.
The one in particular that came in right after the breakup was something to the effect of, I loved you and trusted you, and me, be prepared.
And prepared Ignacio is to protect his family at all costs.
Ignacio and Heather were starting to get very paranoid that something was going to happen. They started to believe that they were being followed and their house was being watched.
I believe that Ignacio and Heather were hopeful that Shauna would just cool it and go about her life so they could go about their lives together.
Well, anyone who's seen Fatal Attraction knows the other woman doesn't like to be ignored. And on January 23rd, 2007, it couldn't have been more true.
It was a typical day for both of them. Ignacio spent the day with his daughter. Heather went to work at the credit union.
But for one of them, it will be their last.
Heather was leaving work with several other individuals. As she left the building, it was dark. It was very cold out. She and her fellow co-workers were crossing the parking lot to where their cars were parked. A masked figure came out of the shadows.
And what happens next is a scene right out of a horror movie.
This figure was dressed in a black mask with a full face mask on it. You could not see any features. The person also had on a black sort of gown. This person approached Heather Garris, raised their right hand, and in the hand there was a weapon, a handgun. This person looked at Heather Garris and said, You're the one I want. Get down on the ground.
Heather's co-workers are paralyzed with fear as the young mother gets on her hands and knees.
Said, you've ruined my life, and then executed Heather Garris by shooting her 2 times in the head at point blank range.
They were stunned, absolutely stunned. There's Heather lying in a pool of blood, and this person runs off and eventually jumps into a pickup truck and speeds away.
Heather dies instantly, surrounded by her co-workers.
Immediately, people in the parking lot call 911. One person said that it looked like the way the person was running ran like a girl. So what they were looking for is probably a female.
And according to Heather's co-workers, that female is most likely Shauna Nelson.
I got on the phone. Heather's been shot. And the first words out of my mouth were, "She killed her, didn't she? Shauna killed her." Everyone knew who did it.
Including Shauna Nelson's husband, a sheriff's investigator who hears about the murder on the police scanner.
Shauna Nelson's husband, he's in the squad room with his immediate supervisor, and suddenly they hear that his wife was a suspect in this murder. He and his supervisor get into a vehicle, and on their way, they notice coming in the opposite direction as his pickup.
Shauna's husband stops the truck.
Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Get out of the car now!
He confronted her. He started yelling at her, "What have you done? Get out of the truck. What have you done?" And when she got out, he saw what he believed to be a mask about ready to fall out. Ultimately, when that vehicle was searched, the police recovered a black mask that had red around the face, similar to what the witnesses said the assailant had been wearing.
But it's not just the mask that looks suspicious.
When Shauna was pulled over, she was wearing a long sweater that came down to about mid-thigh. She was wearing dark black sweatpants. She had on socks, but no shoes.
Shauna's husband calls for backup, and Shauna is immediately taken into custody for questioning.
Shauna claimed she didn't know what they were talking about regarding the shooting of Heather Garris. She indicated she threw on some clothes and ran out to the liquor store. Apparently did not put shoes on to go to the liquor store in the middle of winter.
Sounds like Shauna probably should have spent a little more time rehearsing her alibi. But it doesn't matter anyway. A weak alibi is no match for physical evidence.
She had gunshot residue on her pants, on her sweater. She had it on her face. The next day, down the street from the direction Shauna had been seen coming from, the police found a pair of shoes on a snowbank, and those shoes were positively linked to Shauna Nelson with her DNA.
With a mountain of evidence against her, Shauna Nelson is arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Heather Garris.
Shauna's defense was one of what we call general denial. She didn't do it.
But after a 10-day trial, the jury doesn't buy it.
Shauna was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
And the motive was simple.
Shauna Nelson was an obsessed woman who would go to any length to kill her romantic rival. I mean, why would you kill an innocent person? What was going on in her head?
It bothers me that Shauna has no remorse. You know, if she really loved Ig, you would think there would be a little bit of emotion there, and there wasn't. I think she's exactly where she needs to be. And it's just too bad she had to take Heather from us.
It's a cautionary tale for the ages. Enough to make husbands think twice before jumping into a stranger's bed. Ignacio isn't the first to make this mistake, and he won't be the last. I've found that men aren't always the best listeners. A woman has all sorts of dreams. Daydreams, nightmares, fantasies. And when it comes to romance, some women have a very special talent for making their dreams into reality. But acting out fantasy can be a very dangerous game. And when you are crazy in love, some people would just kill to get what they want. Or, in the case of Kevin and Robin Kalinowski, try to make it look like an accident.
He had everything at stake. He could have lost his marriage. I guess, things sort of spiraled from there.
That's coming up on Deadly Affairs. If you can tough out the long winters, there's no better place to live than Buffalo, New York. It's the place Kevin Kalinowski was born and raised, and where he plans to someday raise his children.
Kevin was a fun-loving person. He was a practical joker. He was sort of like a daredevil type person.
Kevin is a maverick carpenter by trade. But his true passion is the call of nature, a regular mountain man.
Kevin was an outdoors person. I mean, he loved the outdoors. He loved being outside.
Of course, being alone in the wilderness isn't the best way to attract a mate.
Kevin wasn't one to really go out a lot. He was more into the fishing and the hunting and, that kind of thing. But he did go out occasionally.
And it's on one of those occasions in Buffalo when our hunter sets his scope on his perfect catch.
Is this seat taken? Sit down?
When Kevin first met Robin, he was very smitten with her. Robin was Kevin's first and only love.
Robin was a very nice person. She was a very kind-hearted person. She took care of herself. She looked good, had her nails done. She was a lot of fun.
Despite having the perfect manicure, Robin isn't above getting her hands a little dirty for love.
When he wanted to go fishing, she was there with him. They went camping together. They were good for each other that way.
In the fall of 1990, our hunter and his lady set up camp and begin their lives as husband and wife.
They bought a house in Riverside where Robin grew up. Life was good for them.
All that's left for this Boy Scout is a troop to lead. And soon, Kevin and Robin welcome two cubs of their own.
Kevin and Robin did everything together with their kids.
Kevin's boys wanted to play baseball, so Kevin not only enrolled them in the local baseball league, but also took on the duties as being their coach.
Kevin may be the coach, but Robin is the family's cheerleader.
She would sit there and watch our boys play baseball, and she was actually running between two fields because she had two boys playing at the time.
And when they finally reach the proper age, Kevin takes his boys out for their first hunting trip.
Kevin teaching his sons gun safety was very important to him. Going to the target range, he would teach them the proper way to handle a gun safely and to fire a gun safely, always about safety.
How smart of Dad to teach his sons how to handle a loaded weapon. It might come in handy when they start dating.
From what I could see, Kevin and Robin had a very healthy marriage and family home life. I never saw Robin and Kevin argue.
But you know what they say. It only takes one match to start a forest fire.
There came a point in Kevin and Robin's marriage where they started to do things separately.
Rumor has it, behind closed doors, their once hot and cozy campfire is starting to sputter.
Robin and Kevin had been married for over a decade at the time. And I think that she was feeling a little old, maybe not as attractive as she had been in her youth. I think that they weren't getting physical with each other as much as they had in the past.
So what's a bored wife to do? Go out and find a little fun.
Robin seemed to be sort of letting her hair down a little bit, and she was going out with her friends. She was living more like a person in college than a married person with kids.
God knows there are plenty of things at a local bar to help a lonely woman fill the void. And all of them spell trouble.
She was drinking and she was sort of having a good time.
During one of these good times, in walks a blast from Robin's past. John Brackenridge.
Robin and John knew each other from their high school days. And they hadn't seen each other for a long time.
My gosh, Robin, how are you?
Wow.
Ah, the good old days before spouses and kids. When a teenager was free to make out behind the high school bleachers.
I think John and Robin sort of becoming reacquainted at this bar was sort of a perfect storm. They were both involved in long-term marriages. They were both maybe looking for something new.
Maybe it's the nostalgia. Maybe it's the alcohol. But soon those teenage hormones start raging.
One thing led to another, phone numbers were exchanged, and then the relationship sort of began from there. I think that John was in this for a fling, for a short-term affair, for a short-term break from his marriage.
And Robin, well, she may have felt that about John too, at first.
They began to see each other at hotel rooms and sometimes, quite frankly, at the Kalinowski home.
Sex may have helped fill a hole in Robin's heart, but the cracks in her personality are starting to show.
Robin became very swept up in the affair. She put far too much stock in a potential or imagined future between she and John.
A future she's imagining sharing with her lover, even if he has no intention of sharing it with her.
John told Robin that he would never leave his wife. He said he was unequivocal. He didn't see the signs that she was thinking something completely different.
And there are plenty of signs, all right.
Robin was calling John a significant amount of times a week.
I left you a couple messages this morning. Just hoping you could, call me back. I don't know, maybe in the next 5 minutes. That'd be great. All right, I love you.
She told him that she loved him.
Robin's love even went as deep as getting John a job where she worked just to have him close.
Robin would try to have sex with John while the two of them were at work. John was uncomfortable with this for obvious reasons, and she became aggressive. And I think that led to John figuring out that maybe this affair wasn't the best idea in the world.
This is not
With Robin's aggressive behavior, it's only a matter of time before one of their spouses finds out.
She just seemed to want to see him and see him and see him, and as much as John appeared to be pushing her away, that just made Robin push all the more toward him.
Sounds like things are teetering on the edge.
Kevin was a forgiving person, but as for cheating, I think that there was a fine line and Robin crossed it.
And there's more than one marriage on the verge of being destroyed.
John had everything at stake. He could have lost his marriage. He never planned to leave his wife.
It seems John and Kevin both have one serious problem in common. Robin Kalinowski. Something tells me this isn't going to end well.
Every man has their breaking point, and I think he reached his that day.
In Robin Kalinowski's mind, she and her lover John have something special.
Robin and John's affair was serious to Robin. Robin was no longer interested in the marriage. She was going to run off with John.
But there are two people standing in the way of her dreams. Her lover's wife and her husband, Kevin. So one or both of them are going to have to step aside, one way or another.
On November 10th of 2005, a 911 call was placed from the Kalinowski household to a 911 operator.
It seems there's been a terrible accident.
Please help! We need help!
On the 911 tape, you can hear Robin in a full-on shriek, in a full-on cry. You hear her saying, "Oh my God, my husband's been shot," and that he's bleeding profusely.
Within minutes, first responders arrive at the home. Inside, they find Kevin Kalinowski with a gaping gunshot wound to the back of his head.
The crime scene was in the bedroom. There was blood on the mattress. The gun was laying on the floor on the left side of the bed.
A hysterical Robin Kalinowski explains she accidentally shot her husband while he was sleeping. He must have been cleaning his gun in bed before he went to sleep.
She said that she fell asleep on the couch. She woke up about 1 o'clock. She went to go to bed. Then she grabbed something from the bed. When she grabbed it, it was a gun. She said she lifted it up. It slipped, it fell back to the mattress.
It's just crazy enough to be true. But I'm betting more on just plain crazy.
The phone rang about 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's how I found out that Kevin had been shot. So many questions running through your head. He was cleaning his gun. And why is he cleaning a gun in the bed that was loaded? I didn't know what to think.
And neither do police, who initially rule Kevin's death an accident. Accidents do happen, but over the course of several days, Kevin's brother Ken begins to have his doubts.
It just didn't make any sense. My brother was an experienced hunter. For this to happen, he would have had to physically load the clip, cock the gun, slide a bullet into the chamber the bullet, take the safety off, lay down with the gun, make sure it's pointed at his head, and go to sleep. It makes no sense.
The sheer absurdity of the accident story may be why Robin begins changing it over the next several weeks.
Picked it up and it went off. And his head and oh God.
Throughout the investigation, Robin made several statements with regards to how this incident happened. She said one time the gun was on a bed. One time she said the gun was on the dresser.
But it's whispers about another man that really get investigators' attention.
The police found out about Robin's affair with John because a neighbor told the police that this John had been coming and going from the house frequently. And based on that, the police went to talk to John.
It was important for us to talk to John right away to see if Robin had ever mentioned anything to him about leaving her husband, killing her husband.
John may have made one mistake by getting involved with a married woman, but he's not about to make another by lying to police.
John told us that just prior to Kevin being shot, that she was calling him daily.
When we learned that she was telling the man that she was having an affair with that, geez, I'd really like to continue a relationship with you, and I don't really want to be with my husband anymore, an investigation started to generate.
Believing they now have a murder on their hands, detectives look to prove it.
Robin said that the barrel of the gun was some distance from Kevin's head at the time of the shooting. That was not consistent with the evidence, given that the evidence indicated that this was a contact wound. And the forensics indicated that the gun was very stationary and that the wound was directly in the back of his head.
Which translates to this. Basically, Kevin Kalinowski was shot execution style in the back of the head.
There there's absolutely no way that this was an accidental shooting. There is no way to accidentally press the barrel of a gun to the precise middle of the back of someone's head and then accidentally pull the trigger. It's not possible. Could not, would not, did not happen.
2 years after the death of her husband, Robin Kalinowski is arrested for his murder.
I was very relieved that finally this crazy, crazy nightmare was going to finally come to an end in some way.
But like any good Fatal Attraction story, this one has a twist.
Robin's first trial ended in a mistrial, hung jury.
But wait, there's more. As Robin sits in a prison cell waiting for her second trial, she has plenty of time to stew over the fact that her former lover, John, was the prosecution's star witness against her.
She had to believe in her brain that John was the most dangerous, the most devastating witness that the jury could hear. Robin's solution to the problem of John testifying was to kill him.
So our murderess tries to hire a hitman from prison to take care of her little problem.
Listen, I want to ask you something.
But what she doesn't know is that her cellmate has tipped off police to her
So you
plan.
make it look like an accident, right?
Yeah, I can do that.
We arranged an undercover police officer to go into the jail to act as this purported hitman. Robin indicated to this undercover police officer that she did want it to appear to be an accident.
Oh, Robin, you didn't get away with it the first time. What makes you think 2 times is the charm?
After having a 2 to 3 minute conversation with Robin, the undercover came back to our office, and a week later we had a conspiracy indictment on our desks.
Robin Kalinowski is charged with conspiracy to commit murder against her former lover, John. And 2 years later, she adds the second-degree murder of her husband, Kevin, to her ever-growing rap sheet. She is sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
I think Kevin found out that night, the night of his murder, about the affair that Robin was having. I think he reached his breaking point, and I think that he was leaving her.
I think you're cheating on me.
What are you talking?
Are you cheating on me?
What do you mean with
So Robin decided to take matters into her own hands and make it look like an accident, of course.
What she did that night was to wait for her husband to go to sleep, to walk down to the gun safe, to take out the .22 caliber rifle, to walk into her husband's bedroom as he slept, point the gun to the back of his head, and pull the trigger.
And she may have gotten away with it. Except what Robin Kalinowski didn't bargain for was that Kevin's family and friends weren't going to sit back and let her get away with murder.
You know, Robin did a lot of things to my brother and her family, and she always got away with it. And I think she thought that she could get away with anything, maybe even murdering him.
But she was wrong, and saner minds prevailed. We all know that love can drive us a little bit crazy. What is romance but controlled obsession? But when the mind can't keep pace with the heart, that's just a prescription for a deadly disaster.